Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Talking Insomnia episode where we have Dayna as a guest. Dayna, welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Actually, it's Dana, just so you know, it doesn't matter, but
you know, at the minute I said it, I was like, I probably pronounced it incorrectly, but thanks for correcting me, Dayna.
no problem.
So yeah, we know each other a little bit because we worked. You were my client on BedTyme, and so I know a little bit about your story. But just tell us about you know um, a little bit about what you have trouble sleeping, and I know you have a lot of questions. So the mic is all yours.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Thanks so much. So, um, I started my insomnia journey, and it happened. It happened instantly, actually, in around 2005, 2006. Maybe instantly is not the right word. So I took a medication and then just didn't sleep after that. I stopped the medication quickly after, and just but that didn't go away. So it's been 15 or so years. Um, the last few years, I have been sleeping more and more, and I would say I'm 100% better. So because I used to sleep like 2 hours a night or less or zero or two to
Mm,
four. It was very dark for many years. So I've sort of tried everything. I've tried lots of Western medicine, like every medication possible, sedatives, hypnotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, anything that anyone would suggest that might work. Any dose, I didn't even care. I was really didn't. I just wanted to sleep. I've tried any herbal medication, any spiritual treatment. I thought any. I just was. I was in. I was so desperate. I'd do anything. Like I had a German naturopath that prescribed me 50 milligrams of melatonin. I had a Chinese doctor that prescribed me meds to make me vomit because thought it was like a spiritual issue. I had to
oh,
stop that soon because I had to work and I couldn't be vomiting all the time. And I had traditional CBT. I've had all kinds of interventions with sleep hygiene, but like even I would always take it a step further and research more. And so it'd be like my bed positioning with pipes in the house. I don't believe that, but I was like, I'll do anything. And I had an acupuncturist that I was sleeping zero at that point, that he would put needles in my back and then I just sleep in his studio for like I'd have this arrangement because it was the only place I could sleep. Like I've done a lot of great strange things. I just did anything to make try. Um, so yeah, I just had a lot of desperation, despair, and like years of feeling like I'm trapped in a body that doesn't sleep. Like complete helplessness, hopelessness. And so I, I really liked your methodology, Daniel, right from when I heard about it, because I've been working with people lately on sleep hygiene the last couple of years, or CBT that's not like yours, just you know, even like you should eat at a specific time, you should do everything in a day at a specific time. And I, I could never do it all. It's not um, compatible with living life. Like one of my doctors said I should start winding down at 6, and I said like I get off work at 5. Like what kind of life is that? That I
100%.
like I start winding down at like so my whole life revolves around achieving sleep. Like it my whole life I was thinking about it all the time, but then I never wanted like I still want to have like friends do things. So that's where so your methodology was just and you yourself was like a beacon of light that this could work with my life and I might get better. So that's my
Very,
history.
very good. Yeah, as you know, I interact with a lot of people that have trouble sleeping, obviously, but you could, oh my gosh, I could tell like so much effort you put in. This was, what a journey. But how did you find, was it kind of like you just randomly searched YouTube and found my channel? Was that how we got in touch?
Yeah, so I'm always like I've read every book. I've really tried to, and I was also even getting confused with methodologies. But so I think, searching a random night on YouTube, which is pretty typical of me trying to like find a solution
Mm,
for sleeping. And so I just found you on YouTube, I believe.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Very well. And you said that, things were really, really in a kind of dark place. And then things were better. Like had things started to get better even before you found me, or not
Well,
really?
well, so I have times of I'm better, like, so because it's been 15 years.
Yeah.
So I like there was a solid 4 years that I was not good at all, but then medications worked for a while, and then I was on e- um like say Zopiclone or like different combinations of different things for a while that would make me help me sleep for years. And actually Zopiclone helped a lot, but you can't get pregnant on Zopiclone, and I don't want to be on it for life. So it was helping. So I've had years that I did sleep, but I've never been able to wean off meds. I always sort of relapse, or whatever the word is, when you try to wean off meds. I've always wanted to, but I tried about 15 different times, or more than that. I probably attempted so many times, and then I did effectively do that. And so I've had sleep over the years, and I sort of, yeah. So everything works for a little while for me, and then I relapse, and then it gets worse for a while, and then I get better. So it's sort of back and forth.
Absolutely. And I know you have questions, which I of course want to cover, but you know, uh, when yeah, we've worked together. You listen to my channel. Like, what do you think? Like looking back upon like all the struggle, like where do you think all the struggle comes from, and what is your understanding of why you've had so much trouble sleeping?
Well, I always thought it was something related to me and this medication, and something that's not quite right with my genetic something. I don't know really. I wasn't sure, but I liked when in your book that you said it's easy. It's caused by this or this, and you have to fit yourself into um, it's a gas or brake issue, and so it normalized it for me, and so I don't think I'm you know as non-typical as I thought I was before,
Mm,
based on what I've learned from you. So I'm not really sure. I think it was just anxiety related to not sleeping initially. And I do really like that you say it's likened to post-traumatic stress disorder, because and even if I'm trying to calm myself down with various things to calm my mind down, my body is very tense from this roller coaster of, and you say like don't think of it as the big one, but you're like, okay, I still don't totally trust i'm not I'm not going to be sleepless for years, like when one night happens.
mm.
So because it starts off with one it always one night, and then it just sort of rolls from there.
I see. Absolutely. What a couple of my kind of immediate thoughts here is that you heard me say this a million times, but that the more we try, the less we sleep. The person who sleeps really well does sleep well because they're not trying at all. They're not even thinking about sleep. And then hearing, you know, you tried, went to Chinese doctor, like this herbal medicine, you tried this, you tried that. From me, from the outside perspective, it is so obvious that it's like you have tried really, 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 really hard, and you've slept really, 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 really little. And I think when I work with someone that has had troubles for like a decade or 15 years or 20 years, the challenge for me is kind of like a twofold. That one is that after so much time struggling, it can be almost like an identity thing, that you can think like, I am a person who has insomnia. It's so ingrained in how you think of yourself, that can be really problematic, because like the unhelpful thought patterns are so entrenched. So it takes a lot of time. But I think the important point here is that in theory, someone who's had trouble sleeping for 15 years could sleep well day one and sleep well forever if they could magically change their thought patterns like that, which is impossible. So I think the important thing is that for someone who hears this, who've had trouble sleeping for many, many years, it's not like you have like worse insomnia. It's just that your thoughts and beliefs are more entrenched because you had those thoughts and beliefs for such a long time that it just takes a little bit more time to unentangle yourself, disentangle yourself. And the second thing I want to add here quickly is investment. That when you've gone through like every single medication, every herbal thing, you've read every book, you read everything, it can feel like you've kind of invested so much in the insomnia that the mere thought that, oh, all of that was actually, not only was it um, for nothing, so to speak, it actually was the problem itself. It can be really hard to let go when it almost seems like you've invested so much in something. So those are kind of the general challenges for someone who had just had a real struggle for such a long time. So just some broad thoughts there, Dayna, that I hope will help you and anyone else that tunes in.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm okay with that invested time and letting it all go. Like I do want to get better, and
Yes,
well,
yes.
I am. I do consider myself very much better. Like I don't. I actually sort of maybe sounded like I consider myself somebody with insomnia, and I don't want to think that way. It's just like I'm working through that, like not to have anxiety, and that's one of my questions actually, because although like I do things during the day and I have to completely believe in your methodology from a thought perspective, and I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm like
Hmm.
trying.
Hmm. Yeah.
But what I like, how do I like I'm hyper aroused because of anxiety. Like so right now I'm actually in a pattern that I'm not sleeping very well this last 3 or 4 days. And but I don't try to be hyper aroused with anxiety. Like, how do I actually get out of it? Because the more days that it happens, the more I get actually just my body's super tense. And so I try to run or I try to stretch or I try to, I don't know, I do all kinds of things all night. And then I just don't actually know how to break out of hyperarousal once I'm very anxious because it's like I can't choose to break out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, you know, uh, you something that's very good and helpful here is that you identify hyperarousal. You know what that is. And for everybody that's just tuning in here, it's hyperarousal is this like heightened state of alertness that can come from you're anxious, you're excited, you're angry, anything that kind of heightens your alertness, that can produce what we call hyperarousal. And so when you're asking about hyperarousal, Dana, you have understood that hyperarousal is what's driving your struggle, which is great. You know, it takes a lot of time for people to get to that stage. So I think that's just something I want to say that's I find very encouraging. That's great. Now, then when somebody's gotten to a place where like, yeah, I'm hyperaroused, I'm tense, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm stressed, and nothing I do can seem to change that. What am I going to do? That becomes like the natural next question. And then, we can use the analogy of sleep again here and say that it's the same thing. It's the more you try to make yourself sleep, the less you sleep. The more you try to make yourself less hyper aroused, the more hyper aroused you will become. And here's the thing, that emotions, how we feel, whether it's fear, anger, disgust, any type of emotion, it doesn't have a life of its own. Every single emotion you've ever had in your whole entire life came from a thought. Thoughts drive our emotions. So hyper arousal comes from thoughts. And uh, so then that becomes, okay, so I get that. So how do I then change my thoughts? Well, there are actually many ways to do that. But I think there are two like principal ways of changing the thoughts that are causing hyperarousal. And one way is sort of dismissing the thoughts that are causing hyperarousal. So, for example, if you think, if your thought is, I'm going to go crazy, I'm going to lose my mind, then you can dismiss that thought by saying, but that's impossible. Like that doesn't happen to anyone. It's impossible to lose your mind from little sleep. And that can lead you to change your thoughts. It change like, oh, that can't happen. Oh, good. Then I don't have to think about that. And you feel better. You feel less hyper aroused. And then, that's not a problem anymore. The tricky thing here is that when you use that type of dismissal method, if you will, that can easily go into a different direction where that thought actually becomes more sticky. So if you can't dismiss a thought, you have to go in a different direction. And before we talk about that direction, I want to use this I found this super helpful analogy, which is like, you imagine you have a friend who's going to buy a car, and you happen to know that this is a terrible car. It's a lemon. And you call your friend and say, hey, don't buy that car. And your friend just like, whatever, they hang up. And then you're like, what? She's not listening to me. You call her again and say, hey, listen to me. And she hangs up right away. Like, what's going on? And then you go to her house and you knock on the door and you're like, hey, I have something important to tell you. You shouldn't buy that car. It's a terrible car. And then finally she goes, I know all about that. And I factor that in. Actually, I have a plan for that. Then you go, oh, I don't have to warn her. She knew that. The only problem is that you think, why didn't she just tell me right away? I got all worked up for nothing. And so, how does this analogy play into what we just talked about? Well, the thoughts that are making you hyper aroused, those come from your brain trying to warn you about something. Remember, the brain is a survival machine. It always tries to keep you safe. So it tells you, what if you go crazy? What if you lose your job? What if you can never sleep? What if this happens? That's meant to make you kind of like be prepared for some kind of problem and be ready for it. That's what the brain is trying to do. It's trying to keep you safe. But it's confused. There is actually no real problem. It's just like a little bit confused, right? But when your brain goes like, what if you go crazy? And you say, I can't go crazy, then it's kind of like your friend that wasn't listening to you. The brain goes, you're not listening. I have to tell you this again. And then it goes like, what if you go crazy? And then you're like, but I can't go crazy. Then it's like, but you can really. It's you're not listening. And then the brain goes ballistic in its attempts to keep you safe and warn you, and you're resisting it. You're trying to come up with ways of not hearing it. You're like exercising, you're walking around, you're reading a book, you're like coming up with safety thoughts, you're doing all these things. Meanwhile, the brain is like more and more upset because you're not listening. So you can see here that the key is to, when your friend told you, I get it. You're trying to tell me that the car is broken, but I have this on, showing the brain you're listening becomes the way. So when the brain goes, what if this, what if that, what if this, and you go, okay, I'm going to listen to you. And actually, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to imagine the very things that you are warning me about or trying to warn me about. So when your brain goes, you're not going to sleep for 5 years, then you go, okay, I'm going to imagine that. As crazy as it sounds and as terrifying as it sounds, when you are willing to go there in your imagination, when you're willing to be like, okay, now I'm going to imagine what it's like to not sleep for many years. I'm going to sit and imagine this, into the very last detail. Then you're starting to listen to your brain, and your brain goes like, oh, she's actually listening. Oh, she I don't have to warn her about this. Oh, okay. And so when you listen to your brain by doing this exercise I just shared, or just doing like a daily thought download, just writing down these thoughts your brain is feeding you once a day, then that's when magic happens, because when you're willing to experience X, then the brain has no reason to warn you about X. So that's kind of the answer to the question.
That's a really wonderful answer. And yeah, I'm going to start doing a thought download. That's really good. Thank you.
did it
That's
did
really
it make
helpful.
sense, Dana? Did it make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes complete sense. Because I often think, okay, I don't want to be hyper aroused. So, okay,
Exactly.
how do and I know that sort of, and I'm like, okay, well, what do I like? It's not even my head sometimes. Like my head, I'm falling asleep. So I'm reading a book and my eyes are closing constantly, but my body's tense. So I have to, anyway, that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I just want to add one quick thing there. uh it's easy to get stuck in like efforts. So like, let's say your brain is falling asleep, but your body's kind of tense, and then you naturally go into like, why is it tense? How can I make it tense? But another practical thing is just acknowledging that it is tense. So you deploy awareness and you're like, okay, I'm aware my body's tense, and I know that does come from some thoughts in my brain. And you don't have to do anything more, really. Just being aware of that, and always deploy self-kindness. Like when you had a night you didn't sleep at all and you're like, dang it, I'm so frustrated, I'm angry. That frustration and anger doesn't necessarily come from the fact that you didn't sleep, but it comes from, you are frustrated because you can't get it. You didn't, you weren't able to do it. So the frustration comes from your kind of like, quote unquote, failed attempts. You're mad at yourself. So when you just deploy self-kindness and you're like, oh, I see. I'm frustrated because I tried to do something that is actually impossible. Nobody can control their thoughts or emotions. Uh, and when you just deploy self kindness and you're just aware of this, that in itself is often all you need to do. Like the combination of mindfulness, awareness, understanding what's happening, and then always being kind to yourself, not kind of like blaming yourself for failing to do something that you literally can't do. So I just want to add that. That's some recent
Mhm.
thoughts of mine.
That's really good. So when my body's very tense, I become aware of it, and then I um, don't get mad for being that way. And then what if it doesn't dissipate? Sorry, what do I do then? If I'm laying there and I'm aware, and the tension's not going away, and I'm being nice to myself. What then?
Exactly. This is very, very, very insightful again. So let's say you're in bed and your body's really, really tense, and you're like, okay, it's tense. I probably have some hyperarousal, and then, but what if it doesn't go away? Well, that question, when you're answering, what if it doesn't go away? That question has a fall has a, is a different way of saying, what should I do to make it go away, right?
Yeah.
And so then there you have it. So there's effort again. You're trying to make it go away, right? You're trying to come up with a way of making it go away. And the more you want to make it go away, the more sticky it becomes.
So I just sit with the thought and like sort of sit with a tense body, and then maybe it won't go away all night, and that's okay. I just sort of do things around the house, or not. Sorry, I don't work at night. I've stopped that a long time ago. But like lay there, read, stretch. I do a lot of things. I do meditation. I try hypnosis. I do really a lot of things that which is not good. But I do things now that I enjoy from your teachings, like read things I like. Um, so I just sort of
Yeah,
do
you just
things I want to do at night.
exactly. You if you can't, so here's the thing. Let's say you're in this very spot, your body's tense, you're acknowledging that, yeah, this tension comes from hyperarousal. There are thoughts that are producing this. I know that. And I can't make it go away. The more I try to make it go away, the more sticky it becomes. I know that. And then you can be like, okay, I'm awake now. Maybe I should read this nice book. And if that sparks kind of a little bit of excitement or it feels like the right thing to do, then you're on the right track. That's perfect. You just read a book and that's it. Um, but on the other hand, if you say, okay, I should read this book, but that thought makes you a little bit anxious, you know, then you're probably going towards effort again. Then that means that somehow you're trying to read this book to maybe make yourself calm or something like that. So if that's the case, then you're not quite ready to do something enjoyable yet. You probably have to sit with it a little bit more, go introspective, just like observe it, deploy mindfulness like that, and then you can query yourself again later on. It's like, okay, how about now? Do I feel like doing something more enjoyable? And if that seems like, yeah, that feels right to me, then you can just go and enjoy something like that, right?
Yeah, that sounds great, and I want to do it. But the only thing is, I'm a little tiny bit worried. So what happens is I lay in bed from 12 till 6, 7, 8 in the morning sometimes lately, and I know that's not good because you should go to bed when you're tired. However, I am tired. I'm really exhausted. So I just worry that I'll deploy mindfulness and um, self compassion, etc. But for after doing it for something like 8 hours, then I may get like after a while. Sometimes I try to say affirmations or things that make me feel good, but after a while they make me tense too because I'm doing them for hours. So
Exactly.
everything makes me tense because I'm doing it for 7 hours, and then like eventually I'm just like I can't relax anymore. I'm actually mad. So or not mad, I'm actually anxious now.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, staying with affirmations for a second here, they're kind of like a double-edged sword. Like if you if you've seen that, you're doing better, for example, and you slept really well one night, and you tell yourself, "Oh, I can't sleep. There's nothing wrong with me." Then that affirmation becomes a tailwind. It just kind of emphasizes something you truly believe in, that's great. But on the other hand, if you're awake at night and you're really anxious and you're wondering what's going on and you're trying to tell yourself, but I can't sleep, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm good, I can do this, then they do more harm than good because you don't believe in it. It's again like that person who you know who doesn't want to, your friend with who's about to buy a crappy car, and they don't want to listen to you. They're like, no, I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening. So affirmations, when you don't believe in the affirmations, they will do more harm than good. They just become another effort. And so the question here is like, okay, or basically the question here is like, I think the conversation here is really all about what it like your thought process is still all about like, what can I do, you know? And as I deploy mindfulness, for example, what if that doesn't help? And then maybe I say, but try like self-compassion, but what if that doesn't help? And how about if you do something enjoyable? Well, what if, like, you see, like our conversation is, Dana, which is completely zero judgment here. I completely, I'm all about everything I say is about to help you and everyone who tunes in. But just to highlight it, um, you are looking for something, Dana. You're looking for a solution. You're looking for something to do. You're looking for a clue. You're looking for something, and it's that um, goal-oriented activity is the reason you have so much trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know I'm not there yet with at all. Like I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but I haven't internalized it yet, and I hope
Mm.
I am able to soon. Like I have, but I need to. Yes, I completely agree with what you're saying.
And you see, and just to stay there for a second, like, I hope I'm able to soon, which I like it because you're here, you're talking to me, you're listening, you're learning, and I think that's great. I think it's very hard to make progress if you're not, but it's like, if we think about soon, whenever you add a time component, it it it, it easily creates like more pressure, like, so I know this is hard to do, but it's almost like, I want to say, uh, how should I put this? The more you go towards, if I start understanding and deploying this, uh, and I start doing better in the near future, that's great. But if not, that's okay. Also, like that whole like the unattached approach, where this outcome is good and that's the one I prefer, but this other outcome is okay too. That really, like, that's so liberating, where you, and also, like, it's not so much an ability, you know um sleeping is definitely not an ability, and like being less anxious is not an ability. In fact, they all come from non-achievement, so the more if you were, your goal is not to have a goal, all the work is to exert no work. And this sounds kind of like mysterious when you first hear it, but it's kind of like riding a bike, that yes, in the beginning you have to like really really pay attention, otherwise you're going to fall, but after a while there's no effort at all. So how should I put this in a good way? Like, just kind of like put it this way: everything you do, try to make it a non-achievement, like go towards a place where you don't have any goal, you're kind of okay with everything the way it is. Like, you want to sleep better, of course, but you know don't make anything an effort. I'm struggling here to come up with a good way of saying it, but I hope it made some sense.
Oh, it makes sense. And I know I'm not there yet because I'm like, okay, well, how do I get there? And what do I need to read and do to get there to the state of not having a goal? Like that's what's going through my head.
Right, exactly.
So it's not, I have a lot of work to do, but sorry, not work. I have to release. Yes. And I know what you're saying. But I still am like, how do I do that? But I guess I can't do anything. I mean, I shouldn't,
Exactly.
I know what yes, makes a lot of sense. Yes. 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 I don't know. Should I ask my other questions?
Yeah, yeah, please
Oh,
do.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay, that was just, well, that's the major thing I need to work on. So, or not work, not the opposite of work. Um, okay. So a question I had was, okay, all those things have been answered. That's great. So, I was pregnant and we still continue to try to conceive. And I guess I'm worried about when that happens, like how I'll manage being sleepless. However, or maybe I should just, that's like, it's in the distant future. So maybe I shouldn't even think about that at this time.
Uh, yeah, I think you can approach this very many ways, but one is to say that, you it's a distant thing that's not really uh it's one of those things where, like, you know we often hear, like, we should be in the present, right? We, like, in this very moment, like, think about this, like, in this very moment, Dana, the only thing that's happening is that you and I are talking, and that's it. Like, there will never be another moment. The future will never happen, because in the future it will always be now. And th- th- so yes, you can approach it like that. Why would I worry about something in the future now when I'm in the now? That's one way to approach it, for sure. But I think that when something like that happens, when you are pregnant and then you have an infant, you know what you're thinking is, I'm going to lose even more sleep. I'm going to be completely at loss of control. But if we deploy what we know, then we know that the trouble you're having comes from fear of being awake. The problem comes from being afraid of being awake. The problem comes from trying to control something. So when you have an infant, um, you know there's actually, that may actually be really good for you, because it will teach you that you don't have any control at all. And you will be made, you will be put in a place where you have to face the fear you're having, where there is something that is going to wake you up, that you have no control over it. You can learn a lot from that experience. So I think that could be a real turning point.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's really helpful. Um, I am trying to be more present and like I'm reading all this stuff on Eckhart Tolle and stuff. So anyway, that's another side thing.
Sure.
So the one thing that always kind of worries me is I have a lot of fatigue, not like, so I fluctuate between when I'm sleeping well, then I sometimes have tons of fatigue during the day. And so it's either like extreme tiredness or from not sleeping, or when I'm on a good track, I start sort of fatigue sets in. So I always worry about that and the implications with not sleeping. And then secondly, I just been newly diagnosed with ADHD, and it's helpful. It's wonderful that it's helping a lot, the medication. However, I can't actually ever sleep during the day. And so I worry about like when I'm so if I don't sleep at all or sleep 1 or 2 hours, I always am thinking like, well, I can't actually sleep at all during the day. So I don't know. It's sort of that thought's a little bit stressful.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, where this comes from, it's basically like, I'm now taking this medication that is a stimulant, which then will not allow me even a chance to sleep during the day, and
Mhm.
that then makes you more pressure to sleep at night, because you don't, you can't kind of compensate by sleeping during the day, correct?
Yes, I can't. I don't have the ability to sleep during the day, which but then I'm not as fatigued, which is wonderful. But yes, that's the stressful sort of thought I have.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand it. And in insomnia, when you have insomnia, it's like, it's driven by the fear of losing sleep, right? Or the fear of losing control. So, what's the main kind of learning point here is that you have a lot of fear of losing sleep, because even the thought that you can't sleep during the day is kind of triggering for you,
Yeah.
right? So the the what I see as a problem for someone like in your spot is not that you can't sleep during the day, which, because that actually may, if anything, work in your favor, for two reasons. One, you know, it will it will keep you from trying to sleep during the day. So because a lot of people that have trouble sleeping, they try to compensate by sleeping in the morning or sleeping during the day. And then that act of trying to sleep, trying to catch more sleep, get sleep when you can, it reinforces this idea that you have to chase sleep. You should try. So in one way, it really helps you because it keeps you from that act of trying to sleep. And secondly, if you sleep during the day, you'll have a little bit less sleep drive too. So I think there are two reasons why this is actually really helpful for you. But more important than those two things is it's when your thought pattern is I, now I won't be able to sleep at all during the day, so now I feel more pressure to sleep at night. That thought pattern teaches us that you have a fear of losing sleep. You have a fear of being awake at night, right?
Yeah.
And that's the root of it. So that what all the teaching is about is taking you to a place where you are not fearful of being awake at night, where it's okay for you to be awake at night, and then everything then everything resolves. Then there is no problem. When you don't have the fear of being awake at night, then everything else resolves, including this one about like not being able to nap during the day.
Yeah, that is the root. You're totally right. And okay, just a couple of quick little things is, so I know one of your teachings, and this is, I've read this other places too, to always wake up at the same time. But I I find it unbearable sometimes to do that in the, when I sleep an hour, half an hour, something like that. But however, do you have any tips on waking up at the same time? Besides like setting exercise goals, because I just ditch them in the morning, like in the sort when it's the weekend and I have control over if I potentially could get a couple hours in the morning, because I'm sort of a nocturnal person. Like when I worked night shift, I was fine. I can work all night and sleep all day, and that's totally fine. So I do think, I know this is counter to your teaching, but I sort of think I have a circadian rhythm issue. Like I don't actually, I'm fine. Like whenever I do night shifts, it's beautiful thing. Like I sleep all day. There's no problems. So I guess I find it unbearable to wake up at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, no, sure. Let's stay on this topic. Uh, and I just want to say that I definitely believe like we are all different in so many ways, right? Um, and one of them is our sleep preferences. There are definitely people who are night owls that prefer, being up late or even during the night, and some people who are early birds and whatnot. So I do think we have those preferences, and but I don't think that that drives insomnia, for example. So you may have a person who's a night owl who's forced to do a day job, and that person will then just like not sleep as good and not feel as rested as they would otherwise. But they don't need to. There's no struggle. There's not that struggle with like, why am I not sleeping? What's going on? What can I do? I have to try this. I have to try this other thing, right? So you can have some challenges when you have a certain circadian rhythm preference, and then you have a job that dictates something else. But that doesn't lead to insomnia. So that was kind of one thing. Uh, but the other thing is, okay, so how important is it to get up at the same time every morning? I think for most people that struggle, it's good to be fairly consistent, but it's not like, okay, I have to be up not a minute later than 7 a.m. And if I do, I'm doomed, like that. It's a kind of like a little helpful thing that if you wake up about the same time every morning, what's important with that is that it keeps you from chasing sleep. It's a way of reducing your effort. So a lot of people with trouble sleeping, they have one night where they sleep almost nothing, and then it's the morning, and then go like, yes, now I can catch in. I can get another hour, or maybe even two. Maybe I can get even 3 hours. Let me go. Let's go for this. I'm going to go for this. That's not good because that person is chasing sleep, and it reinforces this idea that not sleeping is bad, and I have to sleep whenever I can. So if you have a pretty regular wake up time, that it teaches you that you don't have to chase sleep. And that's really good for the brain to see that it doesn't have to maintain that thought pattern. But when for some reason, but on the other hand, if someone sleeps little one night and there's no effort, they're not, they just sleep in a little bit because that just happened, or they woke up and said, "Ah, I think I can sleep a little more. That would be nice," and they sleep a little more. There's really no problem there because it has not reinforce that unhelpful thought pattern of chasing sleep. So in my teaching, the reason that it is good to have a pretty consistent wake up time is again that it's a way to reduce your effort. It's a way to show your brain that you don't have to try to sleep. You even and it's a way to train the brain to see that you don't have to you don't have to fear being awake, because if you wake yourself up and you do that on purpose, it teaches the brain that, oh, okay, you're actually making a decision that leads to you sleeping less. Oh, maybe I don't have to be so afraid of that. So that's why it's important. But that said, I don't think it's at all as important as the educational part. Like, what's really important is to completely understand why you've had trouble sleeping. You understand your own thoughts, you understand your behaviors. That's much more important than having these behavioral changes, like having a consistent wake up time. So I think if you I would say this for anyone out there: if you're sleeping in to chase sleep, to kind of catch sleep, then you should try not to do that. It's really helpful not to do that. But if you're just like sleeping in because, or sleeping during the day just because you'd like to feel a little more refreshed, you're not chasing sleep. You're just like, I think it would be nice to sleep a little bit more. There's no emotional component to it really, then it's not really a problem. And also, what is super important is always what I talked about earlier, which is the self kindness, which is if you happen to have a goal of like, I'm going to try to be up every morning at 7 a.m. And then one day you slept until 9 or something like that. Then if you go down the road of self judgment and you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? I screwed everything up. Why can't I get this right? You're being hard on yourself, creates frustration, tension, and it's not helpful to you. But whenever that happens, if you kind of like you had this goal, but it didn't happen, then deploy self kindness. Be like, all right, that's okay. This happened. I'll try again tomorrow. Always deploy self kindness.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Daniel. And the one thing I'd add though is, so with the fatigue in the morning and the tiredness I usually feel, it almost feels painful to wake up. So I could sleep all day. It's a very strange thing. Like I could sleep till 2 or 5 like PM. No, I've never woken up without an alarm clock ever. And so I'm definitely not trying to chase sleep. It's that that's a my body feels physical pain upon waking, and my wake time is 9 a.m. because that's, or like 8:45 because I work at 9. And but on the weekends, like I used to, not really sleep during the week, and then on the weekends sleep till 1 or something. However, I now know, this is counter to teaching, that I need to be up 16 hours in order to feel sleepy the next night. Now I don't monitor hours anymore. However, it's if I'm not trying to chase sleep, it's that I'm trying to do the opposite of, I need to wake up because I need to do the consistent time. I know that's problematic thinking. um yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at. It's the opposite of what, like, I'm not trying to do it, I'm trying to wake up um on the weekends because I'm just so tired.
Oh, okay. I see. So it's the struggle is more in the weekend. You would like to wake up about the same time because you think that would probably be better for you. But
Yes.
in the weekend, it's just like you just can't. You're just like,
Yeah.
like something like that.
Like, and so I've tried a number of things, like, oh, having an exercise class like that starts at 9 and I have to be there, and then I just stop going to the exercise class or whatever. Now I
I see.
now Or like a friend meeting, and then, oh, I'm like, oh, then I cancel like all further friend dates at that time. Like, I think,
But how much is Dana? How much of a difference is it? Is it like, okay, weekdays you get up at 8 and then weekends you sleep until like 2 p.m., something like that?
no, not anymore. No, before, yes, I would always sleep till noon at least on the weekends because I was super tired. However, now I don't do that because what I can do is take the ADHD medication, and then I, like I say, if I wake up, take it at 8, then I can't sleep once it kicks in, which is, so I do that on purpose so I maintain a steady wake time. So I have this crutch I can use. Um,
Also,
so like,
so that's kind of actually resolved now. Now there's actually no
yeah,
conflict there, I guess.
yeah, actually, now that I say that, I'm like, I actually have, but
What
anyway.
what I was going to say though was if you know if you typically get up at like 8 and then on the weekend you sleep till like 9:30 or something like that, it's if it's nothing extreme, then I really don't think it's personally I don't think it's really an issue unless you think of it as an issue would be what I say.
So okay, so I could catch up on like 2 hours or something. Anyway,
Yeah, you
uh,
know again it's kind of a judgment thing, but I think if somebody gets up like 2 hours later than they typically do, that's really not a problem. Maybe come Sunday they will sleep a little bit later, sure, but you know, I don't. I think it's good to have a pretty consistent wake up time, but also give yourself some leeway. Something like that.
okay, that's wonderful. Okay, one last thing.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
I was wondering is sometimes I do have thoughts racing through my head. Not all the time. A lot of times I'm actually just laying there. But if I do, besides journaling, is there anything else I could do to sort of, it's when there's times of stress, usually. Um, is there anything else to sort of manage those thoughts besides journaling?
Um, I would say this that thoughts are always present uh, in our brain. Our brains just like make up thoughts all the time, and when somebody who doesn't have racing thoughts, they don't have that because they're not trying to stop their thoughts. They just maybe didn't occur to them that they should do that or whatnot. Maybe they didn't have very bothersome thoughts or something, I don't know. But when somebody has racing thoughts, that happens because you're trying to stop certain thoughts. That's the only time you really get racing thoughts. So again, it's kind of like a little bit similar to I if you are looking for something that will sort of like stop the thoughts, then you'll have more of them. But anything that takes you towards it's okay. I'm gonna let these thoughts happen. It's okay to have these thoughts. That eventually, again, goes same analogy again with that your friend who's trying to buy the car. Like when you're listening, then the brain doesn't want to warn you. When you're not wanting to listen, the brain thinks it wants you to warn you more and more and more. So with that said, though, what other things except for like a thought download and like kind of like going there, listening to the brain? What else can you do? Um, there are many things you can do, but some more practical things is thought work as described by like what's her name, Brooke Castillo from the life coach school. Everyone out there, I think she's a genius. The life coach school, Brooke Castillo, I think she's really good. So she basically uh, I think for you, Dana, you can check out. I have a playlist called the Self Coaching Model, or maybe just the model, and that teaches you like how the brain works, and it gives you a framework for how to work with thoughts in a more deliberate way. So, for example, let's say you have this one recurrent intrusive thought, like this one thought that you have all the time. Let's say it is, um, I've lost my ability to sleep. Okay, and then your goal, then you say, okay, this is a problem thought. Obviously this is not a good thought for me to have. It's causing me a lot of anxiety. And so then you say, okay, I'm going to identify a goal thought. I would like my goal thought to be, I have no problem sleeping. That's my goal thought. So how do I go from I can't sleep, I lost my ability to sleep, to I can sleep? Well, you do that by having bridging thoughts, So you create like a ladder, maybe like five or six thoughts that are in between your problem thought and your goal thought, and then you try to take the first step. And you can go from like I've lost my ability to sleep to uh, humans can sleep, something kind of neutral, but it's a little bit better step than I lost my ability to sleep, and then you go to humans can sleep, and then you go from that to your next thought, which is something like um, sleep is produced by the brain. Yeah, I don't know, but you create a ladder from your problem thought to your goal thought. That's one way to work with thoughts. And then you also have what you've read about with Eckhart Tolle and mindfulness, which is just disattaching yourself from them, understanding that you are not the thinker of your thoughts. Meaning, it's not like you are your thoughts. Thoughts are just like sentences in your brain that it just makes up here and there. It's kind of like it just happens, and you just happen to be conscious. You're just a conscious being, so you just happen to hear these thoughts. But the confusion becomes when you start identifying with the thoughts and you think like, oh, why am I thinking these thoughts, and things of that nature. So I also think like mindful meditation, mindfulness, that's another way to distance yourself from your thoughts so that they don't bother you. And so those are kind of my general thoughts on this one.
Well, that's great. So, yeah, that's all my questions. And but Daniel, I just wanted to really thank you because I think I've heard a couple other podcast people, and I sort of hear it in their voice, and I know like it's very, very stressful to not sleep, and what you're doing is really helping people. I think all over the world, and it's just, and you're also very humble and learn from your guests and stuff. And I just really appreciate the work you're doing. Like it's really nice for me to have like a beacon of light. So thank you.
Anytime, Dana. And just, stay in touch. My teaching is always getting better. And I hope that if not this conversation, then there will be an episode soon where you'll be like, I totally get it. And it will lead you to that place where you want to be. So thank you so much for coming on, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, thank you.